And let's see if I can make this work. So I'm just going to launch into this and see how it works. I'm talking about my bike trip. I rode from here in Huntington to Seattle. I started on March 31st, and the next 3 months, 88 days, I rode about 50 miles a day and made it to Anacortes, Washington, and flew home from there. I've done this kind of thing before. I've done a lot of 3-week rides, 1 4-week ride. I did a few before I got married and took like 24 years off and did a few more. And now I'm retired, and I figure, well, maybe I can do the whole thing. I've always, since like I was in my 20s, I've heard about people biking to Seattle, and maybe I can do it. So I'm retired now. The pandemic is down, and Russ Loomis, he's a friend. My wife met Nancy, and she said, my husband is going to do 10,000 miles this year on his bike, go from the East Coast to West and back again. And I said, well, if he can do 10,000 miles, maybe I can do 4,000 miles. So that's my plan. I'm going to take the adventure cycling route. These are people that have made bike routes since like 1976 with the Bike Centennial. And so I'm going to follow the Northern Tier route. I'm going to pick it up in Buffalo and take it all the way to Anacortes. It shows here going to Seattle, but I went to a little place north of Seattle and took a bus from there. So here I go. That's me going down the big hill on the other side of town. That was March 31st. It was still kind of cold, but here I am right across the street here. And I went through town. I started right here in town. And then I picked up Route 20 and started heading west. And went up by Jacob's Pillow. That was the first hill over the Berkshires. And I stayed the first night in Lenox, only like 35 miles or so. Familiar territories. Say that again? Climbing out of the way the first day. Yes. Yeah, these hills in western Mass were the biggest hills I reached until I got to Iowa. So it's real. So there's a few big hills here, and then there's a lot of flat, open country. So I made it to Albany. Started riding along the Mohawk River. I would meet a lot of people along the route. This guy, Hank Tatalo, told me make sure to go to this nice bridge in Amsterdam, and so. Route in Latham out, you know, okay. Mohawk River and yeah. It's a very popular route. That's a route. Oh, very good. It's a nice flat area. It's between the Catskills and the Adirondacks, and it's flat, so that's where they put the canal. That's where they put the railroad after that. That's where they put the turnpike after that. It's a nice place to go. So that's where I go. So I continue along the Mohawk. I met, this man was from Australia biking. You can see he has like 3 pounds of gear on his bike, but he didn't camp at all, and he stayed in motels, and he said he froze a lot. But this guy warns me, when you go up ahead, look out, there's ice on the trail, and he fell down and broke his light. So we got to be careful. And I gave him a tie wrap to get his light back together. So we exchanged information and whatever parts we could exchange. So he had little gear. I have 40 pounds of gear. This is my bike here, and I have everything I need to camp, to cook, to navigate, and to make my way. I got the tent set up on the back. That's what the yellow piece in the back is, and you can see my tent right here. My raincoat's in the front. That's all the riding gear on the right front. I was very organized. So when you stopped to go in places, were you afraid somebody would try and steal something off your bike? You know, I had it locked up, and I also had a alarm on it. Okay. But these bikes are so heavy that it would be difficult for an amateur to get on it and start going, I think. But that was always in the back of my mind. But outside of cities, it's less of a concern. Yeah. Yeah, it's meant to be annoying, and it works. Yeah, this is an item that Russ said you should have one of these, and I thought it was a great idea. This is where the ice was, and I was very carefully got my way through here. This is where the railroad used to go, so there's lots of railroad bridges that are now bicycle bridges, and there's bicycle tunnels, and a lot of locks of the Erie Canal that's still in use today. There's some of it has a towpath along the side, so a lot of across upstate New York was on this gravel path. It's very nice that there's no traffic, but it slows you down a little bit instead of pavement. But it's in the rain, sometimes it got a little wet and a little dicey, but overall, I like the path being off-road was such a nice benefit.
Did you ever fall?
This time I did not fall at all. When I was training for this ride, I got as far, I was doing a test drive, I was going to go to New Haven, and I fell pretty much in front of the Westfield Hospital, and I ended up with a couple of stitches in my leg because it got stuck. I had a new rack on the back, and I didn't quite have enough room where my foot, so my foot was stuck in my shoes that clip in, and I ended up slowly falling down.
Yeah, what cut him was the chain ring. That's the big,
yeah.
It looked like a dog bite. It was disgusting. It was
I call it my shark bite on this. Yeah. So here's the canal. Is the old canal, and the new canal is the barge canal is in use today. This is where they started to build the canal, some more locks. This man wasn't taking care of the blind man, Peter, and Peter couldn't understand how Billy knew I was going on a long trip. So we let the blind man feel my bicycle, and he said, "Oh, you have lots of baggage here." And now he understood what was going on. It was an interesting meeting. Here they talk about the first canal was only 4 feet deep, and it was just hand dug across the state.
Well, they were shipping on these very narrow canal barges, which were mule drawn.
They walk along this path, I think, yes. And I think sometimes the little kids.
Almost anything.
Were you asking what they ship along the canal? They ship peppermint oil and all sorts of things that they could. I met a lot of people along the trail. This Mary, she followed me on my blog and gave me encouragement all the way to Seattle. And there were a few people that followed me along the way. I really like these murals that were along the way. This was in Port Byron, New York. This is day 7. So I wanted to be sure to get my picture in front of these nice murals. This is where, so a lot of commerce sprung up by the canal. So these people shipped peppermint oil down the canal to New York City, and from there around the world, I guess. They became the biggest exporter of peppermint. Huh. Okay. A lot more murals. Remember, bad times are just times that are bad. This was graffiti I liked. More nice murals. There was a guy here surveying the canal with this drone to see if they needed to repair it at all. It opens up again. This is the Niagara River, and I'm in Buffalo now. This is a Peace Bridge that goes over to Canada and crosses the Niagara River. I didn't go to Niagara Falls. I followed along. This is where I'm going to go, along the bottom edge of Lake Erie. And that red line is the Northern Tier Trail. So that started in Bar Harbor, and now I'm going to join it and continue on. I play with Google Earth a little bit to get some different views of where I'm going to go. And I'm going to go along the bottom of Lake Erie and then go over the horizon quite a number of times. Which I've done before. I've gone to Erie Canal before. I've gone as far as Elkhart, Indiana before. But here I'm going to keep going.
Did you go off any of the clam trail to see something that you wanted to see along the way?
You know, I didn't go off the trail very much at all, but like I would see coming up soon is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so I stopped there and I spent a good afternoon. I had been there before when I biked past, and at that time I said, oh, I don't want to go out of my way, that's probably going to be too far. And all of a sudden the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was right there, and I saw it and I fell in love with it. So.
What did you do with your bike when you got there?
So I've been staying in motels all along the way. So I stayed at the Holiday Inn. I splurged and got one not too far that I could walk. I would always take my bike into the motel room, and I could leave it in there safely, and then I could walk over. It was a 10-minute walk to the museum. So here. So I go along Lake Erie. I take pictures of the signs that I like. Yes, you know this. Yes. It's about time that they hired people like me. Yeah. And here they were growing Concord grapes by the side of the road here, and somebody tried to tell me they don't grow anywhere else. But I used to live near Concord, and I'm pretty sure they had Concord grapes there too. And made it to Pennsylvania. Some nice people took my picture here. More grape fields. I would stop at cemeteries a lot. It was a nice, quiet place. There was shade there, and the people there were very quiet. And that's right. No one's going to steal anything.
How long did you spend in Pennsylvania? I think Russ was in Pennsylvania for like 3 hours.
I think it was less than a day. Yeah. There's a little corner. They had frontage on the lake, I guess. Yes. Yes. I met a lot of people. This guy was sleeping by the side of the road wherever he thought he could get away with it. And I always, if I was camping later, I would stay at campgrounds, and I would mostly stay in motels. This guy was really roughing it. This guy was a man walking across Pennsylvania going toward Niagara Falls. He said he was on a religious pilgrimage, and so I asked if I could take his picture. He said sure, and it's actually a wheelchair he's pushing with all his worldly possessions. So there's a lot of people on the road. I don't know. What
if you're between those two ages?
So I'm in Ohio, and I like this sign because I'm a tourist. And here's a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So here is the piano that John and Paul wrote their songs on, and it's the same kind of piano my sister and I were much less successful, but we played on. This is John's guitar, and I'm a saxophone player, and the only saxophone I could find was from Isaac Hayes. Be sure to visit I'll be playing saxophone next spring sometime at the hall next door, right? We'll get to set up a date, yeah. And I like this sign out of Cleveland. So here I continue on. Here's the kind of places I stay at, like the motels, go by the homes in Cleveland, and now it opens up for the next month or two, there's lots of farmland. They grow grain and wheat. I actually had to use my program to identify this crop, but this is a field of wheat. This was right outside of Huntington, Indiana. There's a Huntington, Indiana, it turns out. I biked about 5 hours a day, and or 5.5. I would average around 8.5 miles an hour overall, and I figured at 50 miles a day, if I do that for 80 days, that will get me to 4,000 miles. So my plan was to do 50 miles a day for 80 days and work in 10 rest days, and that will get me to Anacortes by 90 days, and I made it in 88 days. I averaged 49 and a half miles a day, so I was right on schedule. I was very much aware of how many miles I was doing. Right on target. There's a guy I passed was doing 100-mile days, and he finished a lot before I did. But I think I enjoyed it more. So this is Huntington, Johns Creek in Huntington, Indiana. Huntington, just like this.
No, those are red buds.
They're red buds?
Red buds.
Okay. This is day 22, April 21st in Logansport, Indiana. It's a nice sum, yeah. And this is, I was looking for a herd of buffalo, my name is Bill Cody, so I'm attached to buffalo. And I only saw one herd of buffalo, and it was in Illinois. I was surprised. And let's see if I can actually play this. It's an American bison, I guess.
American bison and buffalo.
What a good crowd you are.
This is so. Why aren't my videos playing? So come on, let me. They're harvest. Are they harvesting or are they getting ready for planting?
They're planting here, but
yeah.
We came through that same area.
Oh.
We came through at harvest time, so.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes. And you can fold up those plows, and you see a lot of those agricultural pieces going up and down the highway. How are we doing for time here? Okay. What are they growing here in Varna, Illinois? I'm not sure, but it looked nice. Pots. They're growing pots, yes. Pot plants. So here are the going across the Illinois River, and here is a lot of windmills out in Illinois. A lot of windmills. And and when you see the windmills spinning and they're aimed into the wind in front of you, you can tell, oh, it's going to be a tough day. There's going to be a lot of wind to go into. So across the Midwest, I seem to be going across into the wind with headwinds for like 2 weeks, and then I took a right to go north on the Mississippi, and I hit more headwinds. So it's always the wind is against you, it seems. And these farm fields are just filled with these windmills. It's great to see. I would share my location over the iPhone with Pat so she could keep track of where I was going, and that worked until until in eastern Washington they didn't have any coverage anymore, so it was tougher. So now I'm at the Mississippi River. I'll speed up a little bit. On this side, I'm in Andalusia, Illinois, and on this side it's Muscatine, Iowa. So now I'm going to go north up the Mississippi and then go off west. And when I got to the Mississippi, it was amazingly high. It was flooded. These were the campsites I didn't go in. And I saw an eagle along this, and you can kind of see him through the branches there.
Mississippi right now is in a drought.
Yeah, it's strange how things change. Yeah. And then I continued on. This is through Iowa. Lots of hay to feed the animals. I like the look of this farm. It was nicely laid out. And this is what my cooking setup looks like. So on the side of the Mississippi is the first day. It really was nice enough to camp. and my go-to meal is Dinty Moore. And I saw a fox come by. This guy, I had to take his picture.
Hi, buddy.
And I said hi to him, and yeah, he had a bad leg. It was. And then this is 40-mile-an-hour headwinds I was running into. 40-mile-an-hour gusts, but steady 25-mile-an-hour winds. And this is the wind pattern I was in. So it was head-on going across Ohio and Illinois and Indiana, and then I turned right, and it's head-on again going up north. So I stayed here for 3 days waiting in Maquoketa, in Iowa, and so I spent some time. I repaired my sleeping bag. This was leaking down, so I bound with Band-Aids. I could make it not leak anymore. But I bought some duct tape because Pat said you really should have some duct tape, and that came in handy further on down the road. I also checked to see, I think when I changed my latest flat tire, I disconnected my rear lights. So this is when I'm trying to figure out, are my rear lights still working? And so when I pick up the front wheel and spin it, and it's working. So this is an example of the kind of shoulder that I would work on. Sometimes it's only a couple feet, and there's a rumble strip to protect you from the trucks going by. A lot of farms along the way, a lot more horses looking back at me. Sometimes there's gravel roads I work on. And
hey guys,
these are the cows that are by the side of the road. In eastern Montana, I think there were some days I think that I didn't see anybody until I got to where I was going. But I think always when I stopped for someplace, I could meet someone during the day. It got lonely out in eastern Montana, though. No, the Rockies was it was farther south, but they didn't match at all. I almost made it up to Missoula, but I was north of there even. So I didn't catch that. I've been, and this is when I'm in Iowa here. The farthest I've ever biked was to Ames, Iowa, and so I'm now further than I've ever been before. So this is some more agriculture equipment. This guy's scared of all. This guy is biking. So he could have straddled me. Yeah, he could have gone right over. And this is more Mississippi River flooding. They had pumps and sandbags, and it was very foggy along the river. This is May 7th, so this is before Memorial Day, I guess. This woman was a professor at the local university, and she saw me biking along, and she said, "Come on over and have dinner with me and my husband." And it was a great little visit. And she commented on my blog. She and her family did a couple-day bike trip inspired by me. I was proud. So I'm continuing along the river. I would bounce back and forth between, where is that? Minnesota and Wisconsin. They're raising horses out here. I ran into
hiking before this. Like, was it something that you did before?
You know, I haven't done much hiking. I ran half marathons for a while, so that kind of qualifies. But it turns out I like biking better. I ran into the St. Croix Valley Pottery Tour, and there was a guy. This was Will Swanson and Janelle Jacobson's pottery, and we went to a pottery tour in Western Mass, a Hilltown Pottery Tour, and I ran into the same guy. And we figured out that I went by his house 3 months earlier on my bicycle.
Yeah, we were invited by one of the artists, Marcus Piero, who's on the Hilltown tour.
So here's some baby horses. People I met. Oh, this is a nice bunkhouse. This is the nicest place I stayed at. This was he has 100 to 150 bicyclists stay there every year, and they can have at least a dozen people, I think, sleep there, and they have satellite TV and nice comfy chairs. It's a beautiful place. This is in Dalbo, Minnesota. That's right.
Does anyone else stay in there?
I was the first one of the season. This is the guy Don Olson who started this. Apparently he was a helicopter pilot, but he started noticing all these bicyclists going by his house, and opened up his barn and fixed it up, and this was a beautiful place. So yes, they camped in his yard. Yes. And I signed a log, and someone noticed, the next biker noticed me, and we ran into each other a few states later. Yeah. So this is a beautiful place. The next place, this was in Bolus, Montana. So I went in. They said if you go to the cafe, they'll let you camp across the street. So I went there. I like to camp across the street. They say, wouldn't you like to stay in our room instead? I said, sure. So this was a beautiful little room, and a tiny house. And so then I continued along rail trails. The guy who led the bunkhouse convinced the adventure cycling organization, you should really not go along these roads. You should take advantage of these rail trails. And they changed after a few years. The adventure cycling place gave this. They authorized this, or they said this is the way to go across Minnesota, or at least an alternative.
That's the Wobegon.
Yes, actually, there's a Wobegon. Yes. So the Garrison Keillor's fictional Lake Wobegon, they actually named a rail trail after that. And this was like a couple 100 miles worth of off-road. So this is a beautiful place.
That guy runs the bunkhouse.
He probably talked to bikers, and then he talked to the adventure cycling. He talked to these people, and they actually sent out a representative to ride the trail to approve it for use, they said. This place is called Pelican Lake, for some reason. I met this woman in, where was this? In the side of the road, in Minnesota, I think. So this is Katie Van Dorp, and she's biking all the way from Washington State to her home, where she grew up in Minnesota. And she didn't need her bear spray anymore, so she gave me her bear spray, because I was going into bear spray country. Montana is the place where you have to put your food, you put it up in the trees overnight. And someone told me you have to brush your teeth really well to make sure that no crumbs that the bears can smell, and that is not right, but the Honey Hub, yeah. So this is another bicycling only campground. And then it's across to Streator, North Dakota. And here I see all these things lined up on the top of the mountains in Napoleon, North Dakota. And what the hell are these things? It turns out these are threshing machine collection. A guy just put them on the hill and called it art, I guess. Threshing machines. I think you ride over your grain and your wheat, and it separates the wheat from the chaff. And this is the way they did it 100 years ago. And so they've got lots of these machines. Yeah. Yeah. It's old threshing machines. So now I'm headed off. So you can see I'm still in the flatlands to the east here, but I'm headed toward the mountains. Okay. I like the name of this motel, the Broken Spoke Motel. And here I am in Richardson, North Dakota. I was taking a picture in front of this mural, but this guy, Johnny Conlon, says, "Can I take your picture for you?" So he took my picture, and he told me that years earlier he had seen a woman on a horse with another pack horse, and she was riding all the way across the country west to east on a horse. and he was happy to see me doing it on a bicycle. And he commented on my blog, and he kept giving me encouragement all the way to Seattle. Yeah. And then later that day, I noticed, oh, my tires are wearing through. And that's not good, but I had duct tape that my wife had convinced me. So I patched up my tire as best I could and rode on. And it's another 50 miles to Dickinson, I think, where the bike store is. So I'm hoping that the duct tape holds. On the way, I passed this guy. This is just a whimsical little sculpture. I guess it's like the threshing machine. And so I made it to Stefan's Saw and Bike. They sell chainsaws and bicycles. So these guys are Jason and Randy, and they order some new tires for me. They're coming in the next day. And as I'm waiting for the tires to come in, this guy comes up and says, "Are you Bill?" And I said, "Huh?" And this guy saw my name at the bunkhouse back in Minnesota, and he's been chasing me, and he just happened to go to the same bike store I did, and we chased each other for 3 or 4 days. He was doing like 100-mile days, and I was doing 50-mile days. But out here, there aren't that many choices, so we both did like 75-mile days for a few days. And this day I went through, 27 miles of railroad cars parked by the side of the road. Each one says BNSF on it. I guess this is where they store all their empty railroad cars. But then I get up to, road work the next 10 miles. And then I keep going, and they say,
Road work, and they say no shoulder. How do you?
Yeah, what do you do? So I sit by the side of the road, and I say, I wonder if I can get through there. I wonder if it's safe. And so I eventually would just go through and try. And on this day, it turns into, okay, the pavement ends, but there's really no alternative. I guess I could turn around, but I just kept going, and it's loose gravel for the next 8 miles or so. So this day, I decided to make the best of it, and I wrote a song.
On my way.
I guess you can't hear it all, but I'm
on my way.
So I met up with Rod. This is the guy that has been chasing me, and we said, yes, it was really hard to keep a positive attitude here, and that's really the biggest challenge from these bike rides is getting discouraged when you see like 100 miles ahead of you in the closed road and gravel. But just somehow keeping positive and writing a song when you need to. We decided to. You do? I will post it on my website, billcody.org. So go there and we'll make sure it's available. On my way. He started in Vancouver and flew to the East Coast and went east to west. I started on the East Coast. I wanted to build up to the big mountains at the end, and I also wanted to head into I wanted the sun behind me when I rode early in the day most of the time, instead of having people blinded by the setting sun or the rising sun ahead of me. So I was happy I did east to west, but a lot of people go west to east. You did both, and Russ, I think Russ told me that you get a lot of headwinds no matter what direction you're going in. So, and I was happy to go this way. Yeah. So this is Rod taking off to go ahead of me. This is I found out these were pronghorn antelope. I got a whole herd of them. It's tough to catch them, but and I didn't know what they were, but so I posted on my website, on my blog, what are these things? And somebody responded, pronghorn antelope. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think they're just wild beasts out there. So this is Sand Springs. This is one of the places where there was no campground and no motel for another 40 miles, but they said you can camp behind a store here. So I camped behind a store. I met this guy. This is Donnie. He says he owns Mosby, Montana. He said he came up with some payout of some accident funds, and he bought 30 acres of land, and now he tells me he owns Mosby. I guess you can buy a town out there. This is where I camped. Yeah, he was. It's a nice little brace. Yeah.
There's a lot of characters out there.
This is where I camped. They said, wait till we mow the grass and you can camp anywhere out there. They said if a storm comes up, you might go into that greenhouse in the back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this was nice and quiet and peaceful during the night. And then at midnight, this guy came in, and it was a trailer truck that was really loud, and I think it was a refrigeration unit. And so I didn't get any sleep that night. So I was mad at that truck driver.
Bill, I stopped there to eat.
Oh.
And it was coming through. I said, yes, it's basically the entire town over there.
It's very informal, a lot of these places. Yeah. This is Mosby. So this is my little GPS unit I have on my handlebars, and I have it loaded with the pass, so it can tell me in 38 miles you're going to have a 2.5 mile climb of 3.2%. So this tells me be prepared. There's some big hills coming, and there they are. You know, I have a magneto hub on the front wheel, and it can charge my phone if I do it right, but it wasn't working well. So I have that to charge to make the lights go, and I have 3 batteries that I carry with me, and they get enough charge that I can camp out at night and still use my phone the next day, and then I don't need to charge until the next day. And a lot of times, even at campgrounds, I can charge up my phone. But that didn't work all that well. I took one with me and I shipped that back. 12 ounces, that's too much to carry. So I shipped that back. I would shop, the motels they would have, do you have laundry here? And so I would do my laundry every week or so. I didn't bring that many clothes. I have 2 pairs of socks and, well, I actually had 3, but I shipped one back, and it weighed some grams.
So 7 months this guy did was like 2 pairs of shorts, 2 shirts, 2 pairs of socks. That was about it. 7 months.
Yeah.
Of course, he'd catch up with me and then go, I need something.
Please do my laundry. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times they had it. Yeah. So there was this day that I started on the road at 6 in the morning, and I biked till 3 in the afternoon. It was check-in time. I got into the motel room at 3:04. The hail started coming down. Hey guys. So luckily I wasn't outside during this. I just made it. And then it got a little worse. So it got bad weather sometimes. But, so here I lucked out that I wasn't outside during this. But then I continue on. Now I'm in Lewiston. This is in the middle of Montana. So I'm finally getting out of the desolation of eastern Montana, and it's starting to be a little bit more cities. But I ran into this guy at Moccasin, Montana. This guy was 82 years old. About half the people I met on the road biking were older than me. And this guy has been doing this kind of thing for years. and he was going to go up into Canada and do a couple of provinces he's never done before. And he's showing me his bicycle, and he points to his pedal, and he says, and his pedal falls off. And so he's out here and says, oh boy, it's 20 miles to the next bike shop. What the hell am I going to do? I could push my bike. And I said, well, geez, I don't know. And I've heard that if you call AAA, they'll come in and help you. So I called AAA, and they said, no, we can't come. I said, he's 82 years old. And they said, we'll be there. And they came and put his bike in the back of the truck and drove him to the next bike shop. And so now I know that if I get stuck in the middle of nowhere, I can call AAA. And I'll have to tell them I'm 82. Exactly. So he's in the flatlands here between day 63 and 65, I guess. And so now I'm going to go further and almost to the mountains. I saw this. Those are getting to be real mountains. This is a guard dog guarding his flock of goats. He was very careful, and he didn't trust me apparently. He's looking at me, and that's his flock that he's in charge of. So then this is me following the interstate. So there's a road right next to the interstate that's easier to travel on. No trucks right next to you, and you can go. Yeah. And there's really, the big challenge about here in Montana is no shade, but you can go to a underpass and get shade. So there's another good reason for going to underpasses.
Where did you stop seeing Subway sandwich place?
I would often eat lunch at Subway. Maybe I have breakfast at McDonald's, but they're getting fewer and farther between out here. So here's another.
Oh, you got a good shot.
Yeah. Yeah, and this guy, I like the little trot he does there. Okay, and so these guys were bicycling across were raising money for or something, I'm not sure. But they were going west to east, and they had a van with beds in the back, but they would still stop at motels. So they were really they had someone to carry all their gear, and they had a bed to sleep in every night. So this is another pronghorn antelope, I think, in Valier, Montana. Started to see some oil pumps by the side of the road, more murals, and now I'm starting to get up into the mountains. This is Cut Bank, Montana, and this is, you can't see it too much, but there's like a big railroad train going by. It goes all the way to the horizon, I think. Lots of trains out there. And here's the day that it looked like it might rain again, but I didn't want to stay in the motel, so I kept going. And I get to this rest stop, and it's pouring, and I tried to get under some cover by the side of this shack, but I ended up knocking on this guy's pickup truck, and he said, come on in. And he says, you know your tire's flat, don't you? And I said, oh, no. But he says, I'll drive you to the motel 5 miles down the road, so you're okay. So this was Jeff Jerkins. He's a brand inspector. He would, all the livestock that went through the section of Montana, he would inspect their paperwork and make sure everything was legit. But he drove me to this casino / motel. The guy that dropped me off at this motel said, late at night, or they come out in the morning, the policemen come out in the morning and pick up all the people who were passed out by the side of the road. It sounds like a real rough neighborhood here on the reservation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's right by the Blackfeet Indian Reservation.
Yes.
Campground.
This is the Blackfeet tribe run this motel.
Yeah, campground there was run by the Blackfeet.
Yes.
Just outside of Glacier.
Yeah. Yeah, Glacier, East Glacier we're at. And these are the profiles of the hills that are coming up. And this is leaving Browning and going up into the hills. Yeah, this is just amazing. And, you know, getting across those is, you have to maintain positive attitude. I can make it across these hills. What time? This is June 10th. So this is still, you know, I'm in East Glacier here. I could go across the going to the Sun Road, but that was closed because there was too much snow cover still on there. Yes. And here's, you know, leaving the Blackfeet Indian Reservation. You know? And here I'm going up into the hills, and this is another view. You can see the profile here. This is where I'm crossing the Continental Divide. And I was worried about this for a week, but it's such a gradual rise that by the time I made it to the Continental Divide, it's only a little bit higher than the day before. So it wasn't bad. So I have a big smile on my face here. Well, it says it only labeled it this one place. A couple of, so it calls this. This is the one I was really calling the Continental Divide. Yeah. Mariah's Pass. That's right. This is 5,200 feet high. And this is Essex, Montana. And this is another rainy night. This is another very casual motel. This is how much is a motel room? Well, it's $190, but how much do you want to pay? They said how about $140? And I said, how about $100? I said, how about $120 and we give you a free meal? I said, okay. This was pretty high up, and this was getting cool, and so. I would breathe a little harder up the heights, yeah. But I had crossed an 11,000 foot pass in Montana a few years back, so this is 5,200. So it could be worse. This is Flathead River, Montana, and now I'm starting to see some mountain bikers. This guy is from the Netherlands, but he had to abandon there's a mountain bike race that goes from Canada to Mexico. These guys were going along this from Whitefish to Eureka. My friend Rod told me this is a very dangerous stretch of the road. Perhaps you don't want to bike this stretch. He had his wife shuttle him through this. But I biked through this, and it was good because there were like 100 other bicyclists biking the other way. So there was lots of bikes along this road. It seemed perfectly safe. But they were all biking this trip from Canada to Mexico. This was the road they were taking. Like I met this guy, it was Tony. He had just carried his bike up a mountain and carried it down that day. And these guys were even crazier than I was. They were doing this was a race, and the people who won the race did 200 miles a day and slept like an hour and a half every other day. These are crazy people. Yeah. Yeah.
That's like 2,700 miles.
Yeah. That's a very the Tour Divide. Exactly right. Yeah. But I continue along around. This is Rexford, Montana. Just beautiful country there.
Oh my God, look at the guardrail. There's nothing there. Oh my God.
Yeah, this is Lake Koocanusa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It is gorgeous around here.
Yeah. Federal government owns that lake because it was created by
the Libby Dam. This is the Libby Dam. Yeah.
They own that lake, so they do not.
Okay. Can I keep going until we get kicked out? Okay. This is a place that I came to a sign by the side of the road. bridge closed 6 miles ahead. And then I tried a detour, but that was a gravel road and it went like 30 miles out of my way. So I said, well, maybe I can make it through here. So I would talk to some people, and I finally caught someone outside of the recycling area, and he said there's a railroad bridge next to the washed out bridge, so you can walk across that. So here I am walking across a railroad bridge. And then, yes, that was a big thing. Yeah. How often does a train come through? And so I start to see a lot more bicyclists now starting on the west coast going east. This is another Indian reservation, more bicyclists doing the Northern Tier Trail. 66. I'm going to be 67 next month, but apparently you can keep doing this forever. I was amazed how old the 82-year-olds. Well, maybe you can. So if you don't turn around, and you've done some of the roads before.
No, in a car.
Okay.
Driven across country.
Okay. Here's the narrow shoulders logging trucks for the next 36 miles. So that's the kind of sign you don't want to see too often. But this guy, he yells across the street, "How old are you? 66?" I got to tell my wife that other guys my age do this kind of thing. How old are you? So here's some more Google Maps stuff and more. This Sherman Pass is like the tallest point of the trip. So this is so I cross a civilian conservation corps site where FDR hired a lot of kids to go build cabins out in the woods, I guess. But then I get to Sherman Pass. So this is 5,500 feet. So going up the hill on the east side, it's in the 60s, and that's plenty hot enough because I'm really warm going up the hill. But then I get to the top, and all the rain and sleet has been held back by the mountain. So now I get going downhill. I had to put socks over my hands because my hands were freezing going down the hill on the other side. And it was tough the first 1,000 feet or so, but it warms up pretty quick going down the hill on the other side. It's a mountain. Very steep hill. And this is, sometimes I have to load up on lots of sugar and fat, but this is I bought lots of treats along the side of the road.
No, you eat this and then find a place to have supper.
Yes. I could eat like 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day. Yeah. I lost 30 pounds doing this trip. I've gained back a good 10, 15 pounds since then, but 30 pounds over 3 months. That's, and this is the next pass. These are a family I saw from, I think, Austria biking toward Boston. And they had tandem bikes. And so now I'm almost to the last couple of hills now. And I get to Omak, Washington. I stopped at this bike store / yoga studio and talked to the owner about how to adjust my brakes properly. And now I'm confident that I can stop going down the big hills coming up over the telephone because the store wasn't open at the. And here, this is another place where you take any shade you can get by the side of the road. More people going east. This is a third of the last 4 big passes, and I met this guy who is Johnny from Germany, and he's hiking from Canada to Mexico. He's doing this Pacific Crest Trail. He does 18 miles a day. Huh. I had never heard of that trail before, but this guy, he's going along the Continental Divide all the way to Mexico. And he told me about one time there was a river he had to cross, and he didn't cross it because it was too dangerous. it turns out he had to help police find the body of the guy who didn't make it across the river. So there's some dangerous places here. You got to be careful. But this guy is a software engineer on sabbatical from working on trains in Germany. And this is the trail he's taking from Canada to Mexico.
People that do the Appalachian Trail know this one. Yeah.
And this guy, well, out here there were like 70 miles between stores, so I was a little light on provisions, but he said, oh, you want some ramen noodles, you want some electrolytes, so he gave me a lot of food, and it worked out perfectly. Yeah. And here's where I had to put the food up the tree so the grizzly bears don't get it at night. And this is my tuna noodle casserole with Annie's macaroni and cheese and a can of tuna fish. This is another good meal. I met these Finnish couple on the trail. And here's a nice sign you don't want to see. Prescribed burn. Do not report. So there'll be fires you go through ahead, but don't worry about it. Just reset them. I guess. Luckily, I didn't see any fires. But here I'm going up to the hills of Maxima, Washington. And this is really I like the mountains here the best. The Northern Cascades. Through the snow by the side of the road. And this is Washington Pass. This is the last big hill. And it's pretty much all downhill from here to severe side winds next 27 miles. This is another sign you don't want to see, but the winds weren't too bad. And now it's all downhill. So here's the path through the mountains. I could go left to go to Seattle, but I went to Anacortes, the official end site for bikes only. And there was no one else using it, so I had my own site. I've been to some places where they said there's no motel rooms here. There's a Bigfoot convention in town. They've taken all the sites. So I have to travel another 10 miles to get to a motel room, I think. So I'm closing in on the last day. This is Ross Lake National Recreation Area with Diablo Dam. And some tunnels to go through. This is Ross Lake. This is there's a town called Concrete, Washington. And then there's a last rail trail going into Cedro Wellesley in Washington. This is through Lyman, Washington, along the Skagit River. And more, this is summer cypress growing. It's a nice tree house. And one last bicycling pair going west. And now I'm in Anacortes, and I stopped and talked to one last couple, impressed them with my bike ride. I said, I rode across the country to get here. And now I get to the Pacific Ocean, and I get my picture taken. Skinny Bill. And so this is Louise. She took my picture for me at the end of the trail. So now I get a good meal, and I go to this bike store and get my bike packed up and ship it home. And then I took
That didn't happen for weeks, though.
Yeah, they couldn't ship it for a couple of weeks, and I said, fine, I don't want to sit in that damn saddle for another month or so. I took a shuttle bus to Seattle and hung out in Seattle for a day and flew back home. And these are the last few days, and now this is a profile of my trip across the country. So on the bottom, that's left to right is how I did. So that little bump at the start on the left is the hills, the Berkshires and the Taconics here in Massachusetts. And then it doesn't get that high again until the middle of the country. And then it gets really high, and then there's a few big peaks, and then you get to Seattle.